Welcome back, everyone, to the 8 Limbs of Yoga course. We've discussed the yamas and the niyamas. We've discussed asana, and we've discussed pranayama. And we're currently about to discuss pratyahara. Now, it's been a little while since I've worked on this course, and mainly that's because in order to understand pratyahara, you need to spend a lot of time contemplating and applying the yamas, the niyamas, the practice of asana, and the practice of pranayama. Now, pratyahara is the 5th limb of the Eightfold Path of Yoga. And I consider it to be the gateway or the threshold to those profound experiences that many people are probably looking for through yoga and meditation. However, I can't say it enough, and you'll hear me say it again and again, the yamas, the niyamas, asana, pranayama, this has to come first. And while we can work at practicing the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th limbs, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, those won't really give the results that you may be expecting from yoga until the previous limbs have had the chance to do their work. And for many people, that takes a while. It takes years. So let's just review a little bit here. We have the yamas, which are the social observances. We have the niyamas, which are the moral observances. We have asana, which deals with postures. And many times we can interpret that to mean like triangle pose or warrior pose. But the asana is a posture which you can have in your body, which allows you to sit still. But it's also a posture for the mind, which allows your mind to be still. And then we move on to pranayama, which very grossly is interpreted as breathing techniques. But pranayama is a method of tapping into the breath, the life force, but also removing any triggers, obstacles, blockages within the nervous system, within the energetic part of our body. And this is important because in order to perceive higher states of consciousness, you have to remove the impurities, the blockages, which can be mental, emotional, psychological, even physical. And by doing that, that gives the ability to see reality as it is. So pranayama, when you do pranayama, there's a lot going on. It's strengthening the body. It's moving the lymph through the body. It's activating and deactivating certain aspects of the nervous system. If you have emotional triggers or psychological complexes, the idea is if you do it with enough regularity and with enough awareness and you can handle it, it helps to resolve those things. And one other thing you'll hear me say again and again is that we have to attend to our mental, emotional, and psychological well-being. And pranayama can do that. However, many have found, and many of the students that I have worked with over the years, when they listen to what I'm about to say, they found that it gave them really great breakthroughs in their practice. As we grow up and as we experience the world and family and people and situations and traumas and joys and losses and gains, these leave imprints within our consciousness. And some of those run very deep. And sometimes we have to work with a counselor or a professional to dig those things out, to find those things, to resolve those things. And what many students have told me is once they have worked at that, they found that when they sat down in meditation, it flowed naturally, it flowed easily, because there wasn't all this energy going towards holding away anxieties, pushing down fears, trying to willfully master your anger, dealing with sexual impulses. People have found that when they did the subtle, tricky, hard work of digging into those things and trying to figure out where they come from and how to resolve them, that it was as if meditation, withdrawal of the senses, pratyahara, concentration, dharana, again, meditation, dhyana, and samadhi, it was as if they began to happen naturally. They began to flow naturally. And everything before pratyahara, the yamas, the niyamas, asana, pranayama, this helps to contribute to that emotional well-being. They contribute to that emotional well-being in the present. So from this point forward, when you practice the yamas, the niyamas, asana, pranayama, from this point forward, you are staying conscious, you are staying clear, and so conditioning isn't necessarily sticking to you. But let's say you have all these experiences from childhood that you've never looked at, that you've been able, through your type A personality, to wrestle into submission and beat down in a box deep down in your consciousness. Or through your type B personality, you've just not even cared about and been lackadaisical and just let the conditioning run all over you. And you just let it go in that regard, but it's still there. It's still coloring your perceptions, which means once you get to the doorway, the threshold, the gateway of pratyahara, you may have some success, and I'm sure you will, but you might not have as much success, because as you're looking through that doorway, through that threshold, through that gateway, you're going to see the light of consciousness behind it, but it's going to be colored and stained by all this effort you've put into holding down your psychological complexes, your emotional insecurities, your fears, your desires, and so on. And we have to be aware of this. Now, again, it doesn't mean that you don't practice pranayama, you don't practice asana, you don't practice the yamas and niyamas until you've gone to see a counselor or a psychologist. No, you can do them at the same time if you need to. And not everyone needs to see a professional. So I do need to speak to this, though, because I've met countless students who do. And I am one of those students. So I'm speaking from my own personal experiences here. And luckily, because I studied psychology when I was in college, I had a proclivity towards being okay imagining that and engaging in that. So you need to do your best. And if you find you're not necessarily experiencing the type of peace or clarity that you would expect yoga to provide for you, it may not be yoga's fault. It may be that there's just a lot of baggage holding you back. Now, you know the techniques, you know the philosophy, but you just can't quite get to that gateway. It's like you're being pulled back, and it's these disturbances which are holding you back. Now, again, the practice of yoga itself can be very transformational. So the practice of yoga itself can help you release those things. But very few people have the tenacity to do that. Very few people have the awareness to be able to move beyond their own personal denial to do that. Some can. But I want to encourage you to err on the side of caution and maybe just explore the possibility that you might not be able to do it all on your own. And once again, those of you who are interested, I do my best to try to keep a little list of resources. So at kriyayogaonline.com, you can go to the resources page. And currently there should be listed maybe 2 counselors, one I've worked with, another whom I know very, very well. He's also a Kriya Yoga teacher and practitioner. And the third is an astrologer whom I've trained, who has been trained in counseling. So she has the skills, and she also has an astrological background to help in that regard. So you have resources available to you. And there may be people that you find yourself that you can work with. And as I talk about working with a counselor, you might have to shop around a little bit. It's just like a massage therapist. You know, I've been trained as a massage therapist, so it's very hard for me to find a massage therapist that I like. So what do I have to do? If I want to find one I like, I have to try a few just to see what the rapport is, what their skills are, what their plan is, and so on. So you might have to do that with a counselor or a therapist or a mental health professional in that regard. And that's okay. That's just part of this path. That's part of the investment in this path. And it tends to pay off in the end. Now, some people might ask, well, why can't the guru help in that regard? Well, the guru can help in that regard if the guru is trained in those kinds of modalities. The guru can help to point out things, but what I have found, again, in my own experience working with students, but also observing my own teacher, Roy Davis, interact with students, while Mr. Davis had a clear, almost supernatural capacity to see what someone needed, him just saying it to them didn't do it. Why? Because they didn't have the ability to hear that, because they were so caught up in their own psychological complexes, they couldn't believe that they needed to work on the things he advised. And I've seen it in my own teaching ministry. Students ask me what they need to do. I say, well, it looks like you need to get a job so you have significant resources to just have a roof over your head, to have some stability. Oh, no, I don't need to do that. Or what do I need to do? Well, it sounds like you're in a pretty abusive relationship that you need to kind of work on some self-esteem issues and address that. Oh, no, it's fine. It's a good relationship. Or what do I need to do? Well, it sounds like you need to work on your emotional maturity and quit trying to see the teachers in your life as replacement father figures or mother figures. Oh, no, that's not right. I mean, all gurus should act like a father to me. You know, things like that. This is all foolishness. You know, the role of the guru is to aid you in your realization of the self. It's very different than any other endeavor or practice. Because of the stories that we have read, because of the myths and legends that we have around yoga, we have this idea of the teacher, again, as being this replacement father or mother figure. And so oftentimes when the guru doesn't fulfill that role or can't meet the student's needs there, they move on rather than recognizing the value in the relationship. So that's another thing to consider. And many of us have this. Again, this is something that I had as well. Do you have an idea of a replacement father or mother figure or non-binary parent, however you want to look at it, with teachers in your life? If so, that's an indication of some emotional work that needs to be done. Because if you're an adult and you still want someone to parent you, that points to some psychological, mental, emotional work that needs done. If you are an adult and you want to learn something, what do? Well, let's pretend I'm teaching you how to play the mandolin. When you're coming to me to learn how to play the mandolin, do you want me to teach you scales, correct posture, correct finger positions, musical theory, how to play songs that you like? Okay, you probably do. Do you want to come and connect with me emotionally and have me talk about your problems and give you advice on things that I'm not qualified to give advice on? Well, you usually probably don't do that with someone who's like a music instructor or a chemistry professor. You go there to learn how to play an instrument. You go there to learn how to um, understand some knowledge. Well, the same is true with yoga. We have to remember that in the original yoga tradition, one usually didn't approach the path of yoga until they were either retired, which means they have been parented, they have been a parent, they have discharged their social duties, and now they're able to let go of attachments to the world. And again, this ties into Pratyahara because Pratyahara requires letting go of attachments. And then they would retire to the forest where they would meet their guru and they would practice on their own. Or they become a sannyasi or a swami. And what happens when you become a sannyasi or a swami? You release your attachments. You release your duties and your attachments to your family. So you're releasing this need to have these human roles played within your life. And you dedicate your life to awakening. Now, it may be that as a sannyasi or a swami or a priest or a monk or a nun, that you have some duties to do, maybe take care of the environment, to do some social justice, to garden, who knows? It doesn't matter, and it's as unique as the individual. But you are not trying to get these human needs met anymore through spirituality. You are trying to dive deep into what is true. You're trying to dive deep into what is true. And so again, speaking of the guru-disciple relationship, that is not a human relationship like you are used to. The real guru-disciple relationship is aiming to give you a glimpse, an understanding, a direct experience, a life of what lies beyond the human mind, what lies beyond the small desires and aversions that all other humans experience. And I'm not trying to be harsh in this regard. There are many very well-respected spiritual texts, and even I think possibly Ramana Maharshi had said this too, that if an individual isn't doing their best to practice spiritually or to wake up, they're really no different than an animal. And the term many of the texts use is they're just a jackass in human clothing. So a donkey in human clothing. And that's true, because if you are not working on yourself, if you are not intending to wake up, to go through the stages of the yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, and so on, well, most of us are then at the whims of our conditioning and of our desires and of our attachments and our aversions. And if you really read the spiritual texts and really listen to the spiritual masters, the whole point is to break the control of those desires, of those aversions, of those small-minded human tendencies, to rise into something or to realize the truth of one's being, which is clear, serene, whole, wise, not ruled by the senses. So this whole process is really very, very different than most other human processes. Now, it still includes the same kind of skills that one needs to be successful in those processes: dedication, attention to detail, discipline, time, sacrifice. But the result, and essentially what one is doing, is really very different. And this is why so few people understand this path. And even once they get on it for decades, they have some issues with it because they're not able to address or to look at this obsession with trying to be human while realizing the spiritual. Now, the human experience is an expression of spiritual consciousness. There's no separation there. But as we'll see as we get into this particular study with Pratyahara, how it relates to Swami Shri Yukteswar's holy science, in order to realize higher states of awareness, we have to let go of lower states of awareness. We have to let go of our attachment and our identification with them. Only when we do that can we really look upwards and perceive and move into those higher states. It's as if those small-minded tendencies, those attachments, those aversions are like rocks or weights that are tied around our waist that hold us down. And there's this amazing consciousness that is free and clear above us. And we can kind of feel that it's possible, that it's up there, but we don't always go for it because, well, we like this rock. Well, I don't know, this attachment, I can't let that go. It means so much to me. It makes my heart just flutter in a very nice way. But in order for us to experience these higher states of consciousness, to get to true concentration, dharana, to get to true meditation, dhyana, to get to a state of enlightenment, bliss, or samadhi, or oneness, the only way you can do it is if you let go of these rocks. And that is the role of the yamas, the niyamas, asana, pranayama, and pratyahara. Now, let's back up a little bit more and discuss the yamas and the niyamas, asana, and pranayama, how it relates specifically to pratyahara. And before we do that, let's discuss what pratyahara is considered to be. So pratyahara usually is translated as withdrawal of the senses. That's the very basic definition, withdrawal of the senses. Now, it's also considered to be turning away from external nourishment, things which nourish us. And this can be food, this can be social connections, this can be hobbies, anything that comes in through the senses. So pratyahara is about letting go of things that feed our senses. Pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses, letting go of things that feed our senses. And you've probably heard me talk many times, and you might think I'm joking, I don't know, about getting off social media or not looking at it so much, or putting your phone away. Well, that's because that's one very profound way of practicing pratyahara. And science will show, if you do some research, that our addictions to social media, our addictions to these electronic influences, it's not because they're electronic and they're new and they're fancy and they're progressive. They've been designed to tap into the addictive part of the brain, the part of your brain that deals with addictions. It sucks your energy away. So you've heard me talk about that, and maybe you think I'm joking, but I'm not, because there's a very real effect on our mind and our consciousness when we are constantly seeking nourishment or stimulation from external sources. I'm using the example of social media and electronic gadgets because they have found the usage of those trigger that dopamine response in our brain that makes us feel like, oh, I've achieved something. But all you're doing is click, 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 achieve, dopamine, dopamine. What happens? You're just wasting all of your vital force in this. It's like a rat in an experiment pushing a button to get a dose of cocaine or something. And the rat gets fat and old and ugly and can't achieve anything, doesn't have any children and won't eat. It doesn't do what a rat's supposed to do, because its vitality has been sapped. And pratyahara, the idea of pratyahara is to preserve our life force, to preserve our vitality. That's one aspect of pratyahara. And when we have enough vitality and energy and life force, again, we have the strength and the current to go within and ride that current inward to the inner realms of our consciousness. And then we begin to understand what these gurus have said, these yogis have said about how when you tap into the source of your soul, or the source, it's as if you are always nourished. That life doesn't come just from food, bread, Life comes from tapping into the realization of where does all of this come from. And Pratyahara is that gateway, that threshold that once we cross, it gives us the capacity to really get that directly. But we can't understand that fully. And this is one of the tripping points. We can't understand that fully until we catch a glimpse of it, because otherwise, all we are doing is we're looking around at life and we're seeing the things that make us feel good. And we're thinking, well, that's God too, that's spirit too, and I can't let go of that. That's ridiculous. And the reason you keep saying those types of things is because you have not really fully experienced that sense of connection and support and grace that you would have if you could just cut off this addictive tendency to want to be nourished by things from the outside, from the external. Mr. Davis would often use the idea or the term or the phrase. He would say, you need to be self-sufficient with a capital S, self, like the real self, sufficient from the real self, sufficient from God, sufficient from that spirit within, not to be dependent on other people for that. And of course, you can then say, yes, but my social needs need to be met. Yes, but I need nourishment. Yes, but I need this. And that is absolutely true. It is healthy to have social experiences. It is healthy to eat your vegetables and your fruits. It is healthy to have leisure time and recreation. It is healthy. But what is not healthy is when you are addicted to those things. When you think those are the things which sustain you, which support you. They keep the body functioning well. They keep the mind functioning well. They balance the hormones. And you can approach those in a healthy fashion. And people who have a healthy mind, emotional nature, and psychological nature know how to recognize the difference. They know when they're just spending time with family for a little while to have that social need met, and they know when they're just trying to ignore something by focusing in a hyper way on family relationships. And the same goes for electronics and social media. A healthy-minded, mentally, emotionally balanced person will understand, yes, it is okay to get on social media every now and then to do something for your work or to connect with someone you need to connect with. It's okay to answer your emails every couple days because it's part of what you need to do, just like checking your mail. But let's back up and let's imagine that we're just talking about checking your mail, like your snail mail, where you get actual letters and things. Wouldn't it look ridiculous if every 5 minutes you were running out to your mailbox to see, do I have mail? Imagine if you were doing that all the time. It's 9 o'clock at night, you're getting ready to go to bed. I need to go check and see if I've got mail. And so you run outside and nope, still no mail. Well, that's what you're doing with your electronic device. Does someone like my post? Is someone doing something? Are people paying attention to me? Have they seen my response? All those things drain you. And you can always remember that idea of going out to the mailbox. How ridiculous would it look if you went out to the mailbox as much as you checked your phone or your electronic stuff? I'm going to drop that topic. Hopefully you're actually paying attention to what I'm saying there and you've got it. Back to Pratyahara. So this is the method of internalizing your awareness. Now, what else makes this so hard? The patience that it takes to develop the capacity to turn within is what makes it so hard. Because remember, not only do you have 20, 30, 40 years of belief and conditioning that fulfillment comes from outside of you. And even those of you who studied spirituality say, oh, I know fulfillment doesn't come from outside of me. Well, you can say that all you want. And you can know that in your mind. But if you really knew it, you would be able to completely cut off all ties to everyone and everything for a week and not get a little twitchy about it. You see what I'm saying? You could put your phone down. You could turn off your phone. You could not check your email. You could go into a cabin in the woods and spend a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you could feel at peace and calm easily. Because you need that to really, you need that ability to really go within. So even people who understand mentally the idea of pratyahara and understand mentally the idea of fulfillment doesn't come from external things, you test yourself. Do you really believe that? Do you really feel that? Do you really know that? Have you experienced that? And if you have, that's beautiful. This is going to be very easy for you. But if you haven't, just face your denial. And we all have some denial. Just face it and figure out how can you work through it. And once you have that ability, again, it will unlock these profound experiences that you've read about, or you've heard others talk about. Now, how can we practice pratyahara? How can we practice it with what we know so far? Well, when you sit down in your asana, which again, asana is just a posture. I'm in an asana right now. I'm sitting in a chair, my feet are on the floor. If I close my eyes and I make my spine straight and I focus inward, that's an asana. So I'm going to consider any asana something that allows you to sit still so that you can begin the process of yoga, of meditation. Well, every single time you sit down to meditate, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour, this is a profound opportunity for you to strengthen your pratyahara muscle. And the way you do that is you have to, for you, now this is going to be specific to you, you have to find the way. I'm telling you kind of what it's all about, and you have to decide based on your own unique understanding of yourself and how your mind works. Remember, one of the niyamas is svadhyaya, self-study. So you have to really pay attention to your own little quirks and idiosyncrasies. What do you have to do in order to let go of everything you think is so important to think about, to feel, to experience? Now, yes, it may be that during counseling that you have to dig into certain memories and so on. Well, that's during counseling. During meditation, you are finding a way to let go of all of that stuff, to let it fall away, to realize that we'll just use half an hour. For that half an hour, there's absolutely nothing you can do about your childhood. There's absolutely nothing you can do about your neighbor, which is giving you grief. There's absolutely nothing you can do about the wars in the world. There's absolutely nothing you can do about saving the planet. There's absolutely nothing you can do about how one of your parents drives you crazy. During that half hour, you can't do anything about it, so quit thinking about it. Give it up. Let it go. Only when you have been able, within just that half hour time period, to say, you know what, this is what I'm doing, will you be able to practice pratyahara. Now, how do you do that? Well, you can use a mantra. You can use a pranayama technique. And by focusing on that, on the breath, on the mantra, at the exclusion of all else, what this does is, it allows you to affirm in your consciousness this one point of focus. And the more you affirm in your consciousness this one point of focus, those other things fall away. So the purpose of mantra, the purpose of pranayama, is to get you to focus on one thing so all the rest can fall away. And sometimes you have to be very engaged, meaning you might have to say, no, I'm focusing on this. It feels like you're struggling in your mind, but that's part of the process. In the same way that when you're in a noisy restaurant, you're trying to hear someone say something very important, you find a way to block out all the noise so that you can listen. Or when you're trying to accomplish a task. Again, you've heard me talk about my friend who has 3 children and how I went to visit her, and they're young children. And she's been a single mother for a while. And these children are making noise. They're trying to get her attention, all this racket all over the place. And she is just perfectly serene and calm. And she's having a conversation with me like the kids aren't even there. All the while, she's handing them bottles and, doing stuff with toys, but she's right there with me. And I know she's right there with me. I can feel it. But because of her skill in parenting, she's able to do that. Well, how did she get that? I'm sure it didn't come easy because I know her from childhood. But through practice, she found a way to attend, to release these distractions, even though they're still going on around her, and remain focused. Well, we have to do this within our meditation practice. So when you sit down to meditate and you begin your mantra and you begin your breath work or your pranayama, and you recognize that there's all this stuff going on, these emotions coming up, these thoughts, these memories, well, that's not a bad thing. That's self-study, svadhyaya. That's one of the niyamas where you are now becoming aware of what is the current state of your consciousness. And it's very important to know what the current state of your consciousness is, because once you know what it is, then you can get to work by saying, okay, this is what's going on right now. So what do I need to do for myself to focus more fully on the breath? Just put this down for a little bit, these distractions, to let them go, to not let them bother me so much so that I can hold my attention on one thing. Once you get the hang of that, and it can take some time, now you're getting ready for the practice of pratyahara, pratyahara. So every time you sit to meditate, it is a practice session. And that is why I encourage you to always be fully present for your meditation, to not just try to put yourself into a trance. Every meditation session is an opportunity to be alert, aware, present. And for some people, that can be exhausting. Why? Because they're looking for an escape through their meditation, through their spiritual practice. And it's not meant to be that. And again, you have to ask yourself, why would you be looking for an escape through this practice? Why? Why would you be looking for an escape through this practice? What are you trying to escape from? If it's mental emotional turmoil, there we have it. That's the reason you have to attend to the mental emotional aspect of your life, and you need support in that regard. If there's too much drama in your life, well, is sitting there quietly going to resolve that drama? Or is figuring out a way to do the hard work to resolve that drama going to resolve the drama? And therefore, then when you sit to meditate, you won't need to resolve drama, and it will be more easy for you to say, all right, let's practice Kriya Pranayama. Let's practice a mantra, and you will just sink your attention right into it. So I hope you can see here that when it comes to your spiritual practice, if you're approaching it from an idea of escape, well, you're not going to like the work that is required, because you want to rest. And again, if you need to rest, either resolve what you need to rest from or just go rest. The practice of yoga is one of the highest practices a human being can participate in. And in order to participate in it, it's very helpful and useful if you are as strong and healthy and prepared as possible. That's why in the Yoga Sutras, it begins with, and now instruction in yoga. It's indicating that you are ready. And now instruction in yoga, you are prepared to perceive, to try to understand, to dedicate your attention to this. In the same way that, let's imagine someone wants to be a doctor or someone wants to get a PhD. Well, in order to do that, that's a lot of hard work. And that's just to get a piece of paper to say you've got some worldly knowledge. But in order to do that, what do they have to do? Can they be caught up in their family drama? Can they go out partying with their friends every night? Can they have one distraction after another? No, they're more than likely not going to be successful. They have to have set up their life such that they have time to study and to really learn what they're studying, so that they have time to think through the formulas, to understand how the formulas work. Well, we have to be able to do this for our spiritual life, and it's even more important for our spiritual life. So Pratyahara, it requires this. Now, let's take a moment to talk about how the yamas and niyamas help with Pratyahara. So what are the yamas and niyamas? We have ahimsa, nonviolence. We have satya, truthfulness. We have asteya, non-stealing, brahmacharya, chastity, and aparigraha, non-possessiveness. How do the daily practices and every experience that we have help us with pratyahara when we sit down to meditate? Well, non-violence, let's consider that first. We are not trying to hurt ourselves or anyone else. We do not have malicious intent. We are also not trying to, in a sense, punish ourselves or torture ourselves. So when we first sit to meditate, we have to ask ourselves, are we doing this out of some skewed sense of sinfulness in a way? You know, many people, what they do when it comes to their spiritual path is maybe they've been raised Catholic or Baptist or some other religion where there's a lot of guilt or control or the idea of sin. And all they do is they just switch from that religion to yoga, and they treat the practice of yoga in the same way that they were being treated in their Catholic religion or in their whatever religion it might be. So whereas before, you know, they practiced their prayers and went to confession and went to church because if they didn't, they were going to go to hell or something bad was going to happen. Well, now they're practicing meditation. They're reading the Yoga Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita to still try to make themselves feel better, essentially to keep themselves out of hell, mental, emotional hell. So the practice can become a distraction. And so how do we apply ahimsa when it comes to pratyahara? It goes back to the process of asking ourselves, why are we doing this? And aside from why are we doing this, it goes back to the process of asking ourselves, okay, am I trying to forcefully pull my attention back in? Am I trying to forcefully pull my attention back in so that I can't see or feel or experience all the painful stuff in my mind and consciousness and all around me? Well, if that's why you're doing pratyahara, you are hurting yourself. So if you stop and you say, okay, I'm trying to turn my attention within, and right now I can't let go of this thing that's troubling me. I have this issue in my life and I just can't let it go. Well, you have to go attend to those things first. When you attend to the things that prevent you from turning within, the things you can control, of course, because we know in life we can't control everything. But there are many things we can control. If you can take care of those things in a healthy-minded fashion, well then, you can turn within non-violently. Now, of course, there are situations and circumstances where you do simply just have to ignore something to go within. So part of this ahimsa non-violence and this is what makes it so subtle and tricky, is you have to figure out the difference. You have to figure out the difference. I can give you some ideas. More than likely, you won't listen to me until you have the experience yourself, but you have to figure out, what can I truly handle, meaning go out and deal with, so it's not a problem. What do I have to simply let go of? What do I have to let go of? And by doing that, by practicing that yama, ahimsa, then the internalization of awareness becomes kind, and it becomes stronger too. Now, truthfulness, satya. There are many ways we could look at this idea of truthfulness as it relates to pratyahara, but one big one is, what's one of the things that really disturbs a person's consciousness? Lies. They disturb your consciousness, they disturb lives of others, but also what happens when you lie a lot. And I don't expect that anyone here is a compulsive liar, but there are little things you can lie about. And I've talked about truthfulness in the lecture on the yamas, niyamas. You can go back and watch that. But what are the things oftentimes people get caught up in? Oh, well, how do I maintain that facade? How do I maintain that image? I told this person that. Well, was that really true? When you don't have integrity with your speech or with who you are, because satya, truthfulness, also deals with integrity with who you are, because when you have integrity with who you are, you don't have to worry about what people think of you, because you are who you are, and it's up to them through their own lens of whatever is up in their head to either respond to that appropriately or respond to that neurotically. And you can't help that. But as long as you have integrity with who you are and you are clear on your boundaries, well, then you can let that go. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So by being truthful in your speech and with who you are and with being very clear on what people can expect of you, that's one less worry, one less distraction that's up in your brain causing all kinds of heat and confusion. So truthfulness is very important, because when you practice the truth, you are stronger, and it's much easier for you to go within, because you're not worried or disturbed by being found out or having to meet someone else's needs because you promised something, or you've acted in a way that now they expect you to be that way all the time, and that's not who you are, and so you have to maintain a facade. Asteya, non-stealing. We can look at this in many different ways too, but I would say non-stealing, we would want to consider more the idea of wanting more, wanting something from someone else, wanting something from the external. So if we're not sitting around thinking about our lack, or how others have more, or how the external world should give us something, and when we think the outer world should give us something, a sense of entitlement, we're more prone to steal from the outer world, to take from it, because we think we deserve it. So through the practice of asteya in this regard, we let go of that need to try to pull something from the outside in, to think that there is actually something out there that is going to make all the difference in our life. So we want to keep this in mind. Brahmacharya, chastity. And again, chastity, we know that it's not exactly what it means in the sense of sexual chastity, but going like God, dedicating everything to your spiritual path, to your idea of realization. So that means when you sit to practice pratyahara, have you done everything to support that practice? Have you decided that this half hour, this hour, this 2-hour period, have you decided wholeheartedly, with conviction, with integrity, with promise, that right now, what you are focusing on is turning your awareness within? And when distractions come up, or when you get pulled away by something, you say, no, I have committed to making the sacrifice to developing this quality right now. In the same way that when you're in a relationship and you've taken vows in that relationship, and when the opportunity comes up to break those vows, you don't sit there and think, well, maybe I can get away with it this time. You say, no, I've made the vow. I'm committed. So stop, get out of here. Quit trying to pull me away. Quit trying to take my attention away from this relationship. So we have to do the same thing with our spiritual practice with brahmacharya. We sit down, and for that half hour, for that hour, for that 2-hour period, we know we are meant to be right there with the infinite. We are meant to be right there with spirit. So we're practicing brahmacharya, or chastity. Now, aparigraha, non-possessiveness. Non-possessiveness. Well, this is one of the most important ones, because part of the spiritual path and practice is recognizing that you are infinite spirit, that you are all, you are everything, you are one, you are the self. And when you have things that you want to possess, and I don't mean possessing a new car or possessing a house, although that's part of it on a more gross level. If you want to possess an idea of yourself as spiritual, if you want to possess a certain experience in meditation, well, you're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong track. Because what you are doing then is you are saying, I want to wake up, and I want to have spiritualization, but I want it to look like what I want. And the I that I'm referring to is your conditioning, your personality, your wants and your desires, your attachments and your aversions. But what if, when you sat to meditate, you just knew what you needed to do, you did your practice, and you did not try to possess surges of ecstasy through the spine. You did not try to possess a mind-blowing oneness experience that you have, that you can relate to maybe a drug-induced phenomena you had as a teenager. What if, as you sat there and turned your attention within, you let go of the idea to possess something, even yourself, and you were just able to be present with what is, and see that as spirit, see that as the infinite, even if it's just a temporary manifestation of something, but to be able to see that, breathe through it, let it go. So when it comes to possessiveness, there's many, many more things we could say about it, and you can contemplate those on your own. But really what we need to focus on is, what do you think you own? What do you think you deserve? What do you think you should be experiencing? Well, these are all concepts that you possess. And in order to get to that state of the self, you have to let go of these things. You have to let go of these things. In order to love God or the divine as you want to be loved, which is unconditionally, you have to love God or the divine unconditionally. Again, sometimes I have, not very often, actually very few, but at least 2 people I can think of, when they have wanted to learn from me. They were great in the beginning because they thought, oh, he has all kinds of fancy things to say. And then the more I focused on, well, are you practicing what I'm saying? Then they started to get a little uncomfortable. Well, why are you so cold? And I said, well, because you need to practice this stuff. We can't just sit here and talk about it. Oh, well, you're awful dry. They start to change. Why? Because they possess this. They possess this concept of what they think a teacher-student relationship is supposed to be like, and they're not willing to give it up. They're not willing to give it up. So we have to be cautious of this. And again, I saw this happen with Mr. Davis as well. In the beginning, oh, he's a direct student of Paramahansa Yogananda, so wise, so self-realized. You read his books and he just gets right to the point, and I love that. But then when they interact with him and he's just getting right to the point and he's not being like Yogananda, as we imagine Yogananda to be, then people start to pull back and say, well, this isn't very nourishing to me. when really it could have been the most nourishing experience they ever had. Remember, as we get to Pratyahara, we want to let go of this idea of nourishment from the external. So when you deify a guru or a person, any kind of person, you are trying to seek nourishment through their personality and how you think they should relate to you, rather than focusing on the purpose of the relationship. And the purpose of, again, a guru relationship is not a human one. It's to direct you to these very subtle processes. And if we're so caught up in personal things, personality things, we're going to miss it completely. So non-possessiveness has a lot of applications here. But when it comes to Pratyahara, in order to go within, in order to withdraw the senses, you have to let go of this attachment to possessions. And possessions aren't just things. Possessions are thoughts, concepts, ideas. Now, the ones you don't let go of, are the principles and techniques that you learn from your teacher, that are within the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, that are within spiritual texts. Those are the structures that you have to hold on to until finally, yes, one day you can let go of it all. But by that time, you are so well established in the infinite that you're naturally going to practice the yamas and niyamas. You're naturally going to understand the value of pranayama, pratyahara, and so on. So until that occurs, these are the things we have to hold on to. These are the things we can possess, because they are a sense of strength until we can fully let go within. And that's why they exist. That's why these practices exist. That's why these 196 aphorisms in the Yoga Sutras exist. This is why the student-teacher relationship exists. This is why, as I've discussed with the Yoga Sutras and the focus on sattva, in the Yoga Sutras, we're meant to cultivate sattva, clearness, lightness, clarity, wisdom, peace. But then, of course, it goes on to say, but eventually you have to let go of that. And of course, myself, and I'm sure many others have thought to themselves, well, if I've got to let go of that anyway, why even focus on it? Well, it's because that development of sattva, that quality of sattva, has the same capacity of having a healthy parent, or yes, a healthy parent relationship. When you have a healthy relationship with a parent and with family, how does that work? Well, it works because you're born as a child and you have to learn things and you have to be taken care of. And when you are raised with a strong, healthy-minded relationship with your parents, what are those parents doing for you? They're doing what it takes to make you strong and wise and clear and capable. So when you become an adult and it's time for you to get out and get a job and have a positive relationship and develop yourself spiritually, you can say, okay, mom and dad, thanks. You've made me strong. I'm ready to go. And you can just leave, hop out the door. Doesn't mean you abandon your parents. You can still interact with them and you can still have a supportive relationship with them, but there's not this addictive, neurotic, weird thing that most people have with their parents, where the parents either want to hold on to them too long and keep them in the house, and so they don't teach them how to be strong, or the kids, or they want to just get rid of the kids, and so they abuse the kids and push them out, and so the kids don't have the skills to be a parent and adult themselves. Well, again, if you have a healthy relationship with a parent, a mother, a father, a caregiver, you're strong. You believe in yourself. You feel confident. You know they've done their best for you. And so you can go out and you can explore the world as a competent human being. Well, the development of sattva is the same thing. When you cultivate sattva, you are strengthening this experience you have as a human being, because you can't deny the fact that you are expressing through a human body. And so you cultivate sattva, you apply the principles of the Yoga Sutras, of these spiritual processes, until you're strong and you can say, all right, now I can flow freely into spirit, because you have that launching point and you're not afraid. You're not looking back and saying, well, maybe I should stay here, nor are you getting kicked into it. So the development of sattva is very important. And this is why it's stressed in the Yoga Sutras. And this is why the practices that are advised, the yamas, the niyamas, and so on, help to contribute to that. Okay, so we'll pause here. We'll take a break here. And there's a lot for you to contemplate. And when we pick up next time, we'll talk about, my goal is to talk about the niyamas as it relates to Pratyahara. We will begin to explore some techniques to experience Pratyahara. And then we'll do another discussion, which will focus on a little section of the holy science, where Shri Yukteswar discusses the process of essentially rising through the stages of spiritual clarity. And that requires this ability to internalize our awareness. So until then, keep meditating, keep contemplating what I have said. And if in your meditation now you can think about, well, if I was going to try to apply what we've been discussing here, how could I apply that to my meditation? And that will make this process more alive and more dynamic for you, which is really a very important, vital thing.